Have you ever considered the thief on the cross? Interesting to note is that Barabbas, his full name was Jesus Barabbas. Interesting to note, the same name as Jesus. And if you take his name, Jesus means Messiah or Savior, Messiah specifically. And Barabbas, just like Simon Bar Jonah, is Simon was the son of Jonah. Barabbas is son of the Father. So Barabbas's full name was Messiah, son of the Father. They weren't just ordinary thieves. The thieves that were on the cross were going to be sentenced, were his henchmen, were his band of rebels. It even goes so far as to call them insurrectionists, rebels. They were the type of thief that was trying to steal back the state of Israel from an occupied Rome. They were religious people like the Zealots who thought that if they could rise up and take over by force, which is the methods of Satan, that they would be able to be seen or confirm that they themselves were the Messiah that the prophecies had spoken of. So here was Barabbas and his thieves, murdering thieves, and they were thieves of a state. And then there was Jesus in contrast. And they said about Jesus when they brought him for sentencing to the Pharisees and to the Romans that they wanted to crucify him, and the Jews said, crucify him, and the Romans said, we find nothing wrong with this man, but reluctantly went on along with it in order to save themselves. So interesting fact is that Jesus did not seek to take power on this earth in that same kind of manner. And objectively, there's a stark contrast with the two methods. Jesus could not take over a power situation that works on fear, force, and coercion with laws to govern people to goodness, or proclaiming to govern people to goodness. And the reason for that is those are the methods of Satan. And Jesus could not use the same methods, because then Satan could just allege, well, I mean, I can rule this way, and if you're going to rule that way, and it's all about authority, then we have no difference in our principles, and I can rule exactly the same way you do. But God's laws don't work like human laws. They are the object, unchangeable laws of reality, just like gravity, same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Laws of love, same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Whether social, chemical, physical, natural, in an unbroken world, God's laws are universal constants with predictable variables, which enable us to be able to gauge reality and work out what is right. So here we got Barabbas, Messiah, son of the Father, his two thieves. And then you have Jesus on the other hand. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Simon cut off Malchus's ear, Jesus gave an object lesson saying it's not about power. He said, if it was, I'd pray the Father and he would send an army of angels and we'll take care of this lickety split. But it wasn't the method that could actually win the victory. So he says, watch. The victory is about, what does he do to Malchus's ear? Healing. Object lesson. And then he doesn't go to take by force and set up a band of insurrectionists to take the throne of David and to kick out the Romans. What he does is he gives an object lesson again. And he says, this is about Evans. The way you overthrow governments of fear, force, and coercion, pretending to be good, pretensions of goodness and righteousness to govern people to goodness, is you demonstrate what they used law for. And the Pharisees, being Jews, had the law given to them, divine law, God's very law, and they said, we have a law, and they said, you, Jesus, are a breaker of those laws. And they used the very laws of God to put God on a cross and murder perfect love, and then seek to make sure that he was dead before Sabbath, to rush home and keep the very Sabbath of that law. So this is articled evidence, and this is the victory. This is how you say God gave evidence. He says, this is what broken man with sinful flesh and selfishness in their hearts will always do, seek to preserve themselves and their stations and their wealth and whatever it is they want to protect, but they will misuse and law, and they could never govern people to goodness. And civil law in some cases is even better, because they didn't want to kill Jesus. They said, we find nothing wrong with this man, but out of fear that there would be a tumult and a rebellion and things would fall apart and he would lose his station or his reputation, he then went along with it. And they released Barabbas, the false Messiah, back to the Jews, and the Jews wanted him. They said, give us Barabbas, crucify Jesus, crucify Jesus, crucify Jesus. So they wanted to crucify the perfect God. So this is what legal constructs of law, proclaiming to be good in the hands of men, even religious, whether civil, they will take God and put him on the cross, and they will rather justify the self-serving, sinning, wrong version. So this is the victory. It's the rock that's not cut out of human devising. It's God's rock, God's government of healing that strikes the foot once everything is already fractured and down to a totally divided. Like as iron doesn't stick to clay, we can look in the world today. Everything is polarized and divided. There are no tables of discussion, and there is no solution left or right. And this spills over. That's God's wrath. He removes his spirit when the people reject it, because he's a gentleman, and the wrath spills over. He comes with healing, and all these governments and their ideologies passed down from Babylon to Medo Persia to Greece to Rome, and the government styles like Hammurabi's laws that were structured so that the state could deliberate in court cases on behalf of men, so that equitable sentences were passed. As the first time it happened was in the Babylonian era. And in America, in the justice departments and the buildings around the world, they have busts of Hammurabi which honor Hammurabi as the code that they run these law and legal systems by, that appear to be good, and to govern people to goodness. But that's a human idol version of governments versus God's government, entirely different. And the thief on the cross, I think, recognized this in that day. And the reason he did was he was a zealot. He was a religious man. They were there with the false Messiah. They had obviously learned this somewhere, probably in synagogue, and they were aiming to aid the Messiah. So they knew when he said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" It would have rang a bell, because that's how they read scrolls in the temple, in the sanctuary. Like, Avi, please read for me from Psalm. They didn't have Psalm chapters and verses, so the Psalms. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then they would recognize the passage. They would read it, and coincidentally, it was the prediction of how Christ would die on the cross. And the thieves, both of them mocking, eventually the one was saying, "Hey, but this guy has done no wrong." And then he sees this evidence. They would have hung there longer. And he says to Christ, "Please remember me when you come into your kingdom." I think he realized that the prophecies were then fulfilled and how gracious the Lord was. And he didn't have a chance to go and develop his character through practice, waking up day by day, beating himself up about the things he wasn't doing right, and sanctify himself. So the whole focus was that he loved the Lord's ways. He saw the evidence of God and the prophecies, that God's methods are totally different to men's methods. And he saw victory in what Christ had done on the cross, and humility. And there's the contrast. There's two different types of governments: man-made, creature-made governments. Satan will come to claim to be God, and he will have his version of a non-human government, claiming it to be superior. But creature-made governments could never govern people to goodness, because we have a genetic flaw in that we've inherited a sinful body that will prevent us from ever being able to do that. So there's just something to think about. If you like it, please like and subscribe. I'm Donovan Joint. This is Demystifying God, and you can go to our website. That's www.demystifying-god.com. We have a number of blogs on there, vlogs, and I'll be doing some blogs in time as well, and the book that takes you through this whole trip, and it talks and exposes about all these mystical concepts and the lies of the devil, is in a book that I've written about the whole plan of salvation from before time right to the end. And I do it sort of in a linear fashion, and I tie in all the concepts and put some allegorical stories. And anybody who reads this, I think they'll be greatly blessed by it. It's my opus. It's the one thing I would like to glorify God with. I don't care about station or high profile. I would rather have 7 billion people read this book for free than to make a single cent from it. So I do make provision for it for free. If you can't afford it on the website, please go there, check it out, and support us. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks for your time.